The soccer coach gets as intimate when they work one-on-one, and we're able to affect their lives as strong, they're able to affect the lives as strongly as we can. And I think that's something that's really in our corner, and as professionals, as we move in that direction and we become not just tennis coaches but more life coaches, some of these things, the forming the good habits, study habits, time management, deal with adversity, deal with success, dealing with all of these habits, when the parents come to me and start to question the grip on their forehand, I'll steer it in a different direction. I'll start talking about the habits we're forming. You know, he played that match the other day, and that ball hit the outside of the line, and he called it good, and he lost the match because of it, and he shook hands, and what great character he's showing. No, but what about the grip on the forehand? Well, don't worry about the grip on the forehand. If we can develop that kind of character, we're going to be successful someday. And as professionals in our field, this is one of the things I think we have to sell more to everybody, the effect that we can have on people in that direction.
Let's be a little bit more practical about what we're trying to do then, and let's decide how we're going to attack this problem formation concept. And to me, I think there are a lot of different ways to form habits, but probably the most efficient and effective, with the highest degree of repetition in the most efficient period of time, is to form the habits with drills. I'm a great believer in drills, as we all are. We all do drills. Drills are fun. Everybody gets out there, runs around, has purposes, has a conscientious intent with what we're trying to do. So basically, what I'm going to try to do is create a series of drills today, and when we go outside a little bit later, we'll go through maybe 6 or 7 or 8 different drills that deal with different different play situations on the court, and show how each of these drills works toward the habit formation that we want. Now, I do believe that drills are a two-edged sword. On the one hand, they are great if you have the conscientious intent and the goal for what you're trying to do. But on the other hand, they're all limited. I think you can't create a drill that solves all the problems. When you're working on consistency and accuracy, you're not necessarily working on your power. You may not be working on your sharp angle. So you have to, I think, create enough drills from enough different positions on court to be able to develop the habit formation that will be meaningful to that player's development. Now, when we do the drills, we're going to have fun because basically we're going to include, and this is why I like this classroom section right here and this phase of the presentation, because basically I will make the testimony that you will get more out of this presentation today, sitting here listening and writing and maybe getting your thoughts going and having things confirmed, or maybe having things debated within. I think you will get more in here than you will outside. The drills are good. The drills are outstanding. But what's important is what is the underlying motivation, the underlying philosophy, and the material, the mental input that you're trying to go into when you're out on the court doing the drills. And I think without that, we're only getting some physical exercise. And we will form some habits, but we're going to do it in a very inefficient and long period of time. So drills become important from a repetitive process. By the same token, they aren't the cure-all with what we're trying to do. I'm going to jump around a little bit today because the topics that I've got on this are basically going to be pieces of a puzzle. And like all puzzles, when you start out there, you start putting pieces together, and at first they mean nothing, but we have a picture in the mind as to what we want to have that final addition look like. So what we're going to do today is spend the time in here putting these pieces of the puzzle together. And when we do, I'm hoping that it will give you an impact that will make a huge difference in the way you approach the on-court work that we're trying to go ahead and do. Now, the first thing that I want to do is when we do the drills, we're going to try to form 4 basic habit patterns, and we're going to do it in a specific order. And I've done this many times before, and it's a little bit easier today because basically you've got the answer in the book. But if I put these 4 letters up on the board, MCAP, and I ask you what English word, there's only one English word you can come up with that makes common sense out of those 4 letters. Those letters in that order are chaos. They mean nothing, they say nothing, and they stand for nothing. Now, what word is there in the English language with those 4 letters that you can form that makes sense? Camp. Very simple. I understand something. I try to keep the questions as simple as I possibly can, because remember, Bruce has to be able to answer them. So we keep them really simple and we go from there. Now, camp. Now, it's interesting because when we use that concept of camp, what we have done is just arranged 4 letters in a specific order. And when we did, we made sense out of what we were trying to form. Now, that's the same thing I think that happens when we undertake development of a player. When we're going to develop a player over a period of time, I think it's critically important to have the progressional scheme in the proper order to get our students to where they want to go. And this, to me, represents the right order. And the first habit pattern that we're going to form through drills and other ways is going to be to develop a sense of consistency. Now, I don't want to overrate consistency, but I don't know how I can. You know, everybody talks about open stance, closed stance, Western grip, semi-Western grip, 2 hands, 1 hand, all these wonderful things that golfers seem to be totally motivated by. How many people play golf in this room? Are you caught up in minute detail with golf and the swing? I talk with golfers at our club. It drives me crazy. I mean, they're talking about the muscles and the adduction and the this, that, and the other thing. They're so caught up in minutia that I don't even know how they can hit a ball. But basically speaking, I don't like to get caught up in that. I like to keep it simple. And the most important habit that I feel that I can teach my students from a physical standpoint on court is the habit of being consistent. Now, I'm going to define that very clearly because I don't think most people define it as rigidly as I do. Consistency to me means that I hit the ball over the net and inside the lines, and I can do it 10 times in a row. I do not own a shot. A shot is not part of my repertoire until I can hit it 10 consecutive times. It's like playing pool. You call your shot, then you have to go ahead and do it. So to me, consistency is best done through drills, and I'm basing it and I'm defining it on the basis of 10 times. When I can hit a ball 10 times in a row, where I said I would, over the net and inside the lines, I am consistent with that specific shot. And you know what? Consistency cannot be underestimated because, to me, it is the ultimate weapon in the game of tennis. The ultimate. Above and beyond anything else I can think about. And just stop to think for a minute. If I am consistent by the nature of my shot, which means I get every ball back or I get the last ball back, I am more consistent than the other player, I beat him. Doesn't matter whether I hit it in the center, doesn't matter whether I hit it deep, whether I hit short, just as long as I get every ball back. We all know the old cliche, and it still hasn't changed, and it's becoming even more prominent today, that matches are not won, they're lost on errors. And ordinarily they're lost on inconsistent errors, unforced errors, errors that you had the possibility of reducing or eliminating. But they're not, because most people don't ever form the habit of consistency. And you know, when I talk about a habit, it's very simple. A habit does not deteriorate under pressure. You know, this great term that's been floating around for many, many years, oh, I choked. You know, I had psychologically, I couldn't get, I had the whole court open and everything like that. In 99% of the cases, I don't believe that the players that are saying that are good enough to choke. Choking is a joke. I mean, it really and truly is. What they're really saying is that they couldn't hit the ball consistently 10 times in a row as a habit. If it's a habit, by definition, it holds up under pressure. If it does not hold up under pressure, then it's not a habit. So we don't have that habit. This is a foundational habit in the game of tennis. Without consistency, I can't improve, and without consistency, I cannot win. So basically, I'm looking for that level of consistency above and beyond anything else. After I can hit the ball consistently, my next progression is to move in that same direction, and I'm going to develop a higher level or degree of accuracy. Higher level of accuracy. Accuracy to me is just a refined version of consistency. Consistency is getting the ball over the net, inside the lines, repeatedly. Accuracy to me would be defining a target, perhaps a smaller target. Getting it over the net, inside the lines, deep cross court. getting it over the net, inside the lines, deep down the line, and putting a target there in such a manner that you can define it by that area that you're presupposing that you're going to hit the ball into. So accuracy, to me, is the next step up from consistency. First, I need to be able to have the consistency. Then once I can, I refine that to the level of having a little higher degree of accuracy. And that presupposes having specific targets. So at no time do I let my students go out on the court without targets on the court. Why? Because the targets act as a goal to aim at from a positive standpoint, and they act as a feedback mechanism from another standpoint. When people hit balls, more often than not, they never develop a sophisticated level of accuracy simply because they measure their accuracy and their consistency by whether they win the point or not. That isn't going to hold water, not at a higher level. What wins at a lower level could be a short ball, a soft ball, not accurate, not deep. So as a result, I need that accuracy in order to secure a higher level or a higher percentage of winning later on. Third most important, once I have my consistency and my accuracy down, I'm going to add mobility. Mobility becomes very, very critical to the development of the potential of my player. And it's interesting because mobility is really the glue that holds the consistency and the accuracy together. I can't have good techniques unless I can move to the ball. And you know, it's kind of interesting because we spend a lot of time developing a biomechanically sound stroke that is a wonderful thing where I can develop a high level of power, maybe a high level of spin, and yet at the same time, we don't talk in terms of moving to the ball. If a player can't get in position on balance to hit the shot, then their stroke is going to be unnecessary. Their stroke isn't going to work. So interestingly enough, the stroke production depends on the mobility factor. Consistency and accuracy depends on their mobility. And mobility to me isn't defined just as quickness or speed on the court. Mobility to me is probably several other things in the version of tennis that we use it. Number one, it would be definitely a sense of balance. Mobility is balance. I need to be dynamically on balance like a jump shooter or a basketball player running down the court in order to be able to make that shot. Number two, it definitely is going to be a situation of reaction time. What I lack in raw speed or reflexes, I can still make up for in reaction time if I'm in good position to be able to do it. Number three is definitely going to be anticipation. What I don't have in quickness and speed, I can more than compensate for, and tennis is a great game of compensations. I can make up for that lack of quickness or speed with anticipation, which means that you're actually moving toward where the ball is going to be hit before it's hit. And I think that's one of the finer aspects of the game that takes players to the higher levels. I would rather have a person who is relatively slow with a fine sense of anticipation, because that means that they understand what's going on out there on the court. What are the percentage shots that can be hit? What are the percentage shots that will be hit? But mobility is very important. And last but not least is tactical position. What I lack in reflexes and quickness on the court, I can more than compensate for by returning to optimum tactical position before the next shot is hit. And there are places on the court that you should be based on the shots that you went ahead and hit. Now, what we've got is a nice ball game of consistency, accuracy, and mobility. Now, if I can get these three things done with my students, they can play at a very high level, very high level. All they have to do is refine those techniques to a greater and greater level. What comes next? Power. Okay? And it comes rightfully as number 4. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but number 4. And my feeling over the years has been, in the players that I've worked with, both adults and juniors, is that they fail, one of the major reasons that they fail to reach their potential and they plateau at a level lower than they would really like to do so. They do that because of the premature introduction of power. Power is not the root of all evil, but the misuse and the abuse of power definitely is. What do I mean by that? Well, most players will develop a certain level of consistency. Maybe they can hit it 3 times, 4 times, possibly 5, and they think they're on top of the world. Do they develop an accuracy level? Well, they can probably go cross-court or down the line. And as soon as they can hit a ball with relatively good technique, consistently 4 or 5 times, and to a certain directional part of the court, then they immediately come to power. They start adding the power. Yes?
There was a recent article about the disposition of players and how they was comparing 2 players. They had this terrific match. One player had grown up as a very consistent player throughout her whole career. The powerful player had always been very powerful and had been able to really hit out at key moments of the match. The consistent player was venturing to become more powerful. And they had this classic match where they hit toe-to-toe, powerful shots all over the court, and in crunch time of the match, the consistent player reverted back to her consistent style, and the powerful player just blew her out last.
And I think that's good. But the thing, and those are good studies, and there are other studies that offset that as well. It's interesting at different levels. But see, the key feature then would be the accuracy. Because if the person can keep the ball relatively deep with that level of accuracy, that's a building block process. First we develop the consistency, then I'm going to make that target smaller. I tell my players we never outgrow targets. We just change them. We make them a little bit smaller, make a little bit wider angle, a little bit deeper, a little bit shorter for the drop shot and so forth. But it's true, consistency without the accuracy is going to break down. But if this becomes the habit as well, in other words, instead of just hitting 10 balls back and forth, now I'm hitting them to this spot on the court right here, or perhaps this spot in the middle of the backcourt right here, or perhaps this spot right here. And we will create those accuracy levels as we're going along. Or if those aren't working, then maybe go with the sharp angle from that situation. So as I said before, the accuracy level becomes a much more refined level of this and must consistently be worked on as we're going through. So I think what you're saying is definitely true, and it will work both ways. I've had players myself, perhaps you have as well, that if they go along and they're the big hitters, all of a sudden they tighten up a little bit more, they start missing the shots on the critical points. You know, it's going to swing both ways. But I think the research is very sound with what you're talking about. But my concept here is in not whether you should develop power or not, it has to do with basically where you introduce it. And let me tell you why I like it out here instead of here, because if the person either puts it there or, say they put it, in your case that you were talking about, here. They develop relative consistency, and then the enticement of hitting that ball harder, more powerfully, becomes attractive, irresistible. So when they start doing that, the basic problem is, as they add power, what happens as you add power? What happens as you create a more powerful stroke when you're going to hit the ball? Consistency will go down, yes, yes. What happens also? Accuracy degenerates, yeah. So as a result, and what happens else? Do you make more errors or do you make fewer? You make more errors. You also hit more winners. Let's balance it out. You hit more winners and you hit more errors. In both cases, my mobility is degenerating down to picking the ball up. In neither case did I get a chance to work on my mobility. So we're talking about a progressional type concept that if this is introduced too soon, it prevents the person from developing a higher level of accuracy. It definitely prevents them from developing the mobility because the point is ending either with a winner or an unforced error, probably 60 to 70% of the time. So as a result, what happens? The player's mobility suffers immensely. And that mobility to me, again, is not just the speed of foot. It's knowing the efficiency of movement on the court. So you don't learn that by picking balls up. You learn that by running for balls. Like David was saying this morning, let's feed the ball, let's get the challenge of running quick here, running quick there, running quick there. That's something you work through over a period of time and becomes part of you. So I'm not against power. And I don't think power is exhilarating. There's no doubt about it. And it also does win points. So I'm not against it. What I'm against is the premature introduction of it and the obsession with it to the point where it takes down the consistency and the accuracy of the player to begin with. So it's a balancing point. And I think we as monitors of the habit formation have to be sensitive to that and be able to raise our levels or lower it, or encourage the person to go with more power, or less power. My rule of thumb is very simple. Very simple. When somebody asks me how hard they should hit a ball, when they ask me how hard they should hit a ball at any level of the game, my answer is very, very quick and very simple, and that is hit it as hard as you want. Hit it as hard as you can. Providing three things. Providing three things. Number one, you maintain your consistency, which means you don't miss the shot. Number two, you maintain your accuracy, which means that the ball goes somewhere in the vicinity of the target that you're aiming at. And hopefully that will be the right tactical target. And last but not least, let's say you can hit it as hard as you want or as hard as you can and still maintain your consistency and accuracy. This is where it kills players at the intermediate level. Providing you maintain the ability to return to optimum tactical position before the next ball is hit. Do you know why? Because at the advanced levels of tennis, the next ball will come back. It's going to come back. That's the difference between intermediate levels of play and advanced levels of play. Everybody thinks it's the power source. No, it isn't. I tell my juniors all the time that in many instances, they're hitting the ball harder than the touring players. The difference is they don't have the mobility or the capability to move back into position to be ready for the next shot because they hit the ball too hard to be able to do that.
An offshoot of that comes when we ask, what things happen when you hit too hard? A discussion, if I hit the ball too hard, three things can happen to me. First of all, as we say, we make more errors. That's going to happen. Secondly, I can't use the whole court, and I think that's what people marvel at Federer. Federer doesn't hit the ball as big as say, Roddick does necessarily off the forehand all the time. Because every now and again, he'll hit the ball softer, because if you hit the ball softer, you can use more of the court. So when I hit the ball hard, not only do I make more errors, but I also eliminate certain parts of the court. You just can't hit the ball lower and hard and hit it at a sharp angle also and use the court. You can't hit the ball. There's something called Fitz's law in motor learning, which is a speed-accuracy trade-off. And it's proven that for any given person, there's a certain speed where there's a trade-off of their accuracy. The third thing that happens is I can't cover the court. I know playing in the 40 and overs, I can't cover the court like I used to be able to cover the court when I played in the men's open division. So if I hit a ball down the line, a passing shot, and my opponent's going to volley cross court, I can't hit it hard. If I hit it hard, I'm not going to have enough time to then go cover the opening. So three real important things that lock into that when you hit it too hard. Of course, we say we make more errors, but importantly, I can't use the whole court, and I can't cover a lot of shots. And I think that especially at the club level, if I deal with my 3-0 ladies, and when they get pulled wide and I have them hit the ball down the line softly, then they anticipate to the open court because they'll take the bait every time and try to hit it where they see an opening, and my ladies go running over there, and they're waiting for the ball as it comes, and then they pass down the line the other way. They're having a blast out on the court now. And it's much more exhilarating for them to try to hit a clean winner somewhere else on the court. But tactically, they've come to understand that there are a couple of drawbacks to the power. As well as Bill says, the power is good too. If you smash an overhead straight at somebody as hard as you can, it's not coming back sometimes in the ladies 3-0 league. So there are pluses and minuses of both, and I think it's important we remember the pluses and minuses of both.
Now, as I said before, look at this as if we're putting pieces of a puzzle together. And when we get the picture done, I think it will give a nice, tightly knit fabric that will make some sense, more sense as to what we're going to try to do out on the court. I'm going to start off now by basically talking in terms of asking you one or two questions. And the questions are important. It's a question that I ask my students, I talk with parents about, and I definitely talk with coaches about when I'm dealing with coaches. And that is, how many of you in the room, I want you to listen to my words carefully because I think it's important. Don't misconstrue the words. How many people in the room believe and know that they have perfect timing and coordination around the clock? How many people in the room believe and know that they have perfect timing and perfect coordination around the clock year-round? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for just a minute, and those people that do believe that, I want you to raise your right hand. And the reason I ask you to close your eyes is because I don't want anybody to be embarrassed by it. Bruce and I will be the only two that take a look at it and see what's happening, okay? If you would close your eyes just for a moment now, please. No peeking. And those people who believe and know that they have perfect time and coordination 24/7, please raise your right hand. Okay?